It says on top of the page 194, it's right in the beginning. And gave the mushal of the wall. When a wall collapses, you see that the stones that are on the top of the wall further away from the original source, and the stones that are in the bottom of the wall fall closer to the original source. And that we learned about in the Maimer as well, the one from the Alter Rebbe. But now he goes into explaining the inyan of the stones. Why does he talk about a wall of stones? It says it's known that in Kabbalah, oisius are called avonim, which means avonim, stones, are a metaphor for oisius, for letters of the alphabets. And why is that? So we explained yesterday, because the letters that we speak with are like daimim, they have no life to it. Intellect has life to it, emotion has life to it, but the words that I use to communicate intellect and emotion are in a sense just technical, and it has no life to it. So it means that like in the structure of the whole creation, there's the daber, there's chai, there's tzemeach, and then there's daimim. So oisius are like daimim. There's no life, like something which is inanimate. And it says, this is the meaning of the words in Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah is a book of Kabbalah, by the way, that there's a few opinions who wrote it. One opinion that was written by Rabbi Akiva, one opinion that was written by Avraham Avinu, and there's another opinion that was written by Adam Harishon. Sometimes when you have these three kinds of opinions, it probably means that all three are true. And the only question is, who is the primary author? But probably it's related to all three. And it's a book of Kabbalah. It's a book which we have today in libraries. There is a book called Sefer Yetzirah. Now there it says that with two stones you can build two houses, which means that when you have two letters, you can put together two words. And the difference is going to be the tirufim. By the way, if you notice the things underlined, these are terms. We'll soon review the terms, the Hasidic terms. So I underline them to begin with to make you more aware that these are Hasidic terms or phrases. Shtei avonim bein shtei batim. And a bayis, a house, means just like a house is a place where a person could live. When you have two letters and you put them together in a certain order, it becomes like a house. It contains in it a certain content, either intellect or emotion. Something is there, but it depends on the way the letters are being combined. And then he brought down that with two letters you can make two words. With three letters you can make 6 words, and so on. So let's start again where we left off. And that's the line that begins with the word kamoi. It's the middle of the page. The first word on the line is kamoi. And that's where we're starting from. Kamoi, oisius, hey, tzadik, reish. Take, for example, 3 letters, a hey, a tzadik, and a reish. Being that it's 3 letters, it has 6 potential combinations. I just want to add, I think I mentioned it yesterday briefly, when we say combinations, you would think and say, wait a second, when you put these 3 letters in this order, it means nothing. So the answer is, it means nothing to us. We don't understand it, not in our language. But any 3 letters that are put together, any 2 letters that are put together, any 10 letters that are put together, there is a certain content to it. It's like when you look at certain letters in davening, which are names of malachim. It's not a word, but we look at the letters together, like, for example, Ana b'choyach. When you say that in the morning, you know what I'm talking about? So right next to it has letters, which is the first letter of each word, but those letters put together don't spell anything that we understand, but they're names of angels. So any letters aleph beis that are put together, they will be letters that contain a certain content. Sometimes we understand, sometimes we don't understand. So therefore, when there are 3 letters, there can be 6 combinations. We do the Kabbalah, Rabbi Meir, and obviously there's something very deep here. If it has to be a tradition that was passed down from the Baal Shem Tov to the Mezritcher Magid, to the Alter Rebbe, and then the Mittel Rebbe, and the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Rebbe of Harash, and then the Rebbe Rashab, and then the Frierdiker Rebbe, obviously it's something very deep. But here he shares this part with us, that there are 6 combinations, but 3 of them are Ikrim. These are the primary combinations. And Gimel Mistaifim, and 3 of them are an extension of the first 3. What are the Ikrim? What are the primary? Hatzar. Hatzar means a person that is persecuting or causing distress. Ratza means desire. And Tzohar means light. You might remember, not from that long ago, when Noach built the Teva, there's a passage where Hashem says to him, Tzohar taseh la Teva, make a Tzohar for the Teva. And there are 2 opinions. One opinion, Rashi says, is a stone that shines. And the other opinion, it means a window so the light of the sun could come in. But either way, Tzohar means light. And like we said yesterday, that in Hebrew, the afternoon is Tzaharayim. And that is because the sun goes from east to west. So when it's more closer to the east, it's not so bright. When it's closer to the west, it's not so bright. But when is the brightest, warmest time of the sun? When it shines the strongest, the most intense? When it's right in the middle of its cycle. Then it's not going more down this way or more down the other way. It's right in the middle. That's called Tzoharayim, the middle of the day. So Baal Shem Tov said, Hashem said to make a tzohar in the Teva. It means like this. The Teva, the word Teva means an ark. But the word Teva in Hebrew also means a word. Teva is a word. Boy ala Teva, which means come into the words of davening and learning. So obviously, there's a way of davening and learning that we don't go into the words. I say the words are coming out of my mouth, but me and the words are in 2 separate places. The other possibility is that when I'm davening, I'm saying words of Torah, words of Tefillah, I'm immersing myself into those words. So the pasuk is saying, Teva, Teva, the words of davening and learning. And Boyala Teva, what does it mean to go into the words? That means to go inside, immerse myself into the words of davening. And he says this in Yiddish. Whenever there is something needed to be emphasized in a maimer, he would write it in Yiddish. Lernen mit achayes und daven mit achayes. To learn and daven with chayes, with enthusiasm, with excitement. So of course, a person could daven and it just feels dry, I'm just saying words, or you can daven and you're all sort of on fire with the words that you're saying. When that happens, that's what it means. You're going into the words. You and the words are becoming one. I'm sure it never happened to anyone sitting here, but there are people that sometimes wonder, how is it in the middle of davening that they're saying parts of benching? How did that happen? Until they realized that they were saying Ashrei, and they said, and the next thing their mouth said was, Baruch Atah Hashem, Hazonas HaKol. And then a few minutes later, they realized the middle of Rachim. How did they get there? So sometimes the words are like, have nothing to do with me and my chayes, and my mouth is just sort of independently speaking. Vayelatev means I'm into the words. I'm just like when a person is speaking to another person about something personal, something emotional, or something intellectual, you're totally into it. It's not going to happen when you talk to a person. Could you imagine expressing emotion to another person, and in the middle of your mouth talks about another subject? That doesn't happen because you're into what you're saying. But by davening, it could happen. By learning, it could happen. So learn mit achayis and daven mit achayis. The achayis meira al pnimius haratzon. What does chayis mean? Chayis means I can do things, and if I do it, obviously I want to do it. Of course, my hands and my feet and my mouth, nothing will function if there's no desire. There's no ratzon. Ratzon means the will. The will is the one that controls the whole body. I have to want to move my hand, my foot, my mouth, my eyes, any part of the body that's moving. There has to be a command that I want to move that part of the body. So, nevertheless, if I do this with chayes, which means I'm doing it with a excitement, enthusiasm, then it's pnimius haratzon. It comes from a deeper place of my ratzon. If I do it without chayes, I also want to, otherwise I wouldn't have been doing it, but there's no chayes to it. Like there's a pasuk in Chumash where it says, "Vayisa Yaakov es raglo," and Yaakov's feet were lifted, and he went wherever he went. So Rashi says that he heard good news, so his feet were lifted. In other words, when you are excited about something, your walk is different, your talk is different, everything is different because there's life to it. So that's called pnimius haratzon. Again, I can't walk unless my willpower will command my legs to walk. But that's chitzonis haratzon. I'm telling you to walk, but I'm not really into it. In fact, I'm doing this reluctantly. But when I do it because I really love what I'm doing, I'm excited about what I'm doing, it's pnimius haratzon. So let's go back now to the three words. One is rotza, want, will. One is tzahar, which means light. And the other one is hatzar, which means someone or something which is causing distress, persecuting, causing a tzara. So let's look again into the words of the Baal Shem Tov. It means that when a person learns and davens in a way that they do it with ratzah, with a real, true internal desire, with this power, we can transform the distress that's being caused by the person who's causing distress, and we can turn that into tzayar, and we turn it into light. In other words, we could rearrange the letters. Like it says, Eis tzara hili Yaakov. It's a tzara, it's a time of distress for the Jewish people. Umimena yivasheya, and the Jewish people will be redeemed and have salvation from that distress. So the simple meaning is, something is going to cause distress, and Hashem is going to help us that it'll be removed, it'll stop. There's a deeper meaning. Umimena yivasheya means not only will be redeemed from it, will have salvation from this distress, but min hatzarahi, from the tzara will come the salvation. Min hatzarahi takes away Yeshua. Not only that the distress will be stopped, but the distress will become a source of tremendous bracha. So in other words, when we speak this way, that way, it really doesn't make much of a difference. But we know that everything in the world gets its life from Hashem. Like Eibishter creates everything, has Hashem created with words. So if God forbid there's a tzara, right? If there's a tzara in the world, that means that Eibishter must have pronounced that word, Tzadik Reish Hey, and that's causing the tzara. When I do what he says here, daven with chayes and learn with chayes, and I change the word tzara into the word rasa, that I want to, and I'm excited about my davening and my learning the way it should be, then Hashem changes those letters with which He created the tzara, and the same letters now become tzayar, a source of light. Of course, we can't see this with everything, but there are many incidents where we can see this begashmius. Something happens, it appears to be a tzara, and actually, when you follow through to the end, you see that this thing turned out to be a tremendous, tremendous blessing. I remember once there was a student that she was a speech therapist and she worked in a public school. And there were some Jewish students in the public school. So she spoke to them about Yiddishkeit. And after a few months, after a while, they got very interested. The parents got more interested. And they ended up taking the children out of the public school and sending them to yeshiva. And when the principal of the public school found out, he was very upset. And to the point that they fired her. Not only, in those days when they fired, I don't know what the rule is today, this is a long time ago, they fired her, but they had to give her another job in another public school. And it was very upsetting because the other public school was not in a good neighborhood. This was good. And she's saying to herself, this is Hashem's reward for what I did. It's a direct result of the good that I did. She was very upset about it, wrote to the Rebbe. I don't remember the Rebbe's precise answer, but something along the lines that, yes, if Hashem is doing it, it's for the good. And a few months later, she called me up and said, you're not going to believe it. Actually, this new place that I'm working in is the biggest blessing that could have happened to me. I tell you this story. I said this story many times about someone who was once interviewed. I heard this interview where they're interviewing someone who was a multi-millionaire. And they asked him, what was the best thing that ever happened in your life? And he said, I was fired from my job. So he said, how's that the best thing that happened in your life? So he said, because I really had no confidence. I had a job that I was working for many years. I was being paid minimum wage, literally the minimum wage. And I never would have done anything else. But I was fired. I was fired and I had to bring food home. I had no choice. I ended up buying something and then I sold it and I bought and I sold and eventually it became a multi-millionaire. And he said, had I not been fired from my job, I'd still be earning minimum wage today. So at the time, it's a tzara. But then you look back now, you see that thing which before was a tzara actually became the source of my blessing. So the same thing is with everything. And based on what we learned before, that when there's something negative, there's a godly spark in it, if I succeed in revealing that godly spark, then we'll see openly that it's not a tzara, but it's tzohar. In fact, there are stories with the Baal Shem Tov. I'm trying to remember a specific story that I once heard, but it was something that happened, and the Baal Shem Tov heard what happened, so he said, well, the letters that make up this word could also be made up, could be rearranged to make up a different word, and he said some other word, and after that, whatever it was disappeared, and a big bracha happened. In other words, when he said those words, he caused that to happen in Shemayim. And so if Shemayim changes the combination of the word, the same word, which could be negative, could now become positive. But again, the novelty in this idea is not that the negative goes away and the positive comes in. Is that whatever it was before negative, the same letters that constitute that word turns into becoming something positive. This is similar to what the Rebbe says about Golus and Geula, that the same letters which spell the word Goila, which is Golus, Gimel, Vav, Lamed, Hey, the same letters spell the word Geula. Yes, you have to add an Aleph. But after you add the Aleph, it's the same Gimel, the same Vav, the same Lamed, the same Hey. But now that it's rearranged differently and there's an Aleph in the middle, which means Hashem's presence, it's not that the world disappears and some new planet appears. But this same world that we're in and everything that we're here together with right now becomes a source of Geula. And the same is on a personal level. So Zehu Inyan Tzoyar, we turn the page. Tzoyar means Shemer Rav, a very strong light shines. Just like in the afternoon, that it's called Tzoharayim, Shu Teikev Zrichas HaShemesh. It's the strongest part where the sun shines with the greatest intensity. And the same is with the pasuk, V'oyhava, of those that Hashem loves, Kitzeis HaShemesh B'gvurasei. They will be able to experience the sun as it comes out in its full strength. When does the sun come out in its full strength? That is when there is the afternoon of the day, the middle of the day, that's when the sun comes out in its full strength. Now that that pasuk, is also being used in this context. The Gemara says that if someone, God forbid, is suffering, and he doesn't, chas v'shalom, turn against Hashem, and he's able to accept the suffering from Hashem with love, to realize that Hashem loves me, and Hashem nevertheless is doing what he's doing because of love, but I don't understand it. Again, let's not mistake this with not davening that it should stop. We're just talking about what happened, not what's going to happen. Remember the general rule regarding the past, we say it's Hashgacha Pratis, and Hashem is doing it out of love. Regarding the future, we're supposed to daven and ask Hashem for revealed good. But what it says is that if a person is going through some sort of suffering, and he accepts it, which means he recognizes that really there's a hidden bracha in this, and it's coming from Hashem's love and goodness, then he'll merit that he'll have the sun as it comes out in the daylight. The same idea, that the sun won't be hidden, it'll be revealed. The word tzara will turn into the word tzohar. So he's going to explain now how all this is related to a nisayon, because really the pnimius, internally in a deep, deep place, there's a tremendous source of light in the nisayon, and my Aveda will allow that light to be exposed and to reveal. Any questions? No? Okay. So let's do a quick review so we keep track of where we're going. The review is here in the booklet on page. I really want to make copies of this part so you can write. So you know what? Let me wait another day to the review, and I'll make copies so you can write in if you want. So let's do Gimel. He's going to go into explaining more the whole idea of the godly spark that's in things, how it comes from the world of Tohu, and that'll lead us into the whole Inyan of Nisayon. To explain this even more, all letters of the alphabet, depending on how the letters are arranged and combined, that's the way the light of logic and intellect that'll be in these words. The content that's in the words and the content that's encompasses the words will all depend on how the letters are arranged. So like we just said, you can have three letters. If it's arranged tzadik, reish, hey, it spells tzara. So the content is very frightening. If it's spelled tzadik, hey, reish, the same three letters, but rearranged differently, then it's tzayhar, which is light and a very intense light. But what does it mean by what's in it and what's around it? So he explains, every word has a certain content that's in the word, and there's a content that's around the word. What does that mean? Take for example the word of, which means a father. First of all, you have the meaning, the simple meaning that it means the father. And then there is what it implies. There's a certain implication. Every word has its meaning and an implication. I think the word implication is what it means, what's around the word. What does it involve with? He gives an example. Tevas boy. Let's take the word boy, which means to come. So boy means to come. What is the implication here? Me'ayimba, where are you coming from? La'anba, where you're going to. So the word ba in itself means to come. But where you're coming from, where are you going, and everything else about my coming, what is it involved with? Why am I coming? What's the purpose of my coming? All these details are not written there, but it's all implied by the word ba. The same applies to every word. There is the definition of the word, and also what's the implication of the word, that there's more going on with this word. And And that's why oases are called kalim. In the previous ois, he explained why oases are called avonim, stones. Here, he's referring to another term that's used, kalim. Oases are kalim, which means when a person speaks words of seichel or words of emotion, of midos, so the emotion or the intellect, that's the real life. That's the neshama, so to speak. And the words that I'm using, these are called kalim. They're vessels. They're just vehicles of communication. It just allows me to communicate what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling to another person. So they're called kalim. Through these tools, I'm able to express it. By the way, kalim could mean tools. Kalim could mean actual vessels, like a cup, a bowl, a plate. So now he's translating the word kalim not as tools, but as a vessel that contains something in it. So just like a keli has in it and accepts in it what's put inside, in Yeshnam kalim, there's certain vessels, mekablim eichem, they're designed to contain food. Yeshnam kalim, then there are other vessels, mekablim mashka, they're designed to contain liquid. And they're different. If you use a basket, for example, for apples, it's perfect. If you use a basket for juice, it's not going to work so well. How can it be? Is it a keli or not? It's a keli for this, but not a keli for that. And that's general, but then there is also details that whatever is being contained has to be something which fits and suitable for what you're putting into it. Same thing with the words are also kelim. What are they kelim for? They receive the light of the seichel that's in it. So in Chassidus, this is one of the most common terms: and keli, a light and a vessel. Sometimes you'll use a term a neshama and a guf, energy and a tool, but it's all the same idea: and keli, of light and a vessel. So light means the energy. In this case, the energy what we're talking about is intellect or emotion. And the keli is that which contains that energy. And just like with a keli physically, depending on what you're putting in, the keli has to be different. So even if it's for food, like an apple, apples would be different foods would be different. So too, depending on how you rearrange the letters, that's what the word will look like and have a different meaning, even though it's the same letters, but once you rearrange it, it has a different meaning. I mean, today, it's so much easier to relate the idea that rearranging a letter could be a huge difference when you talk about telephone numbers, the same numbers. Imagine someone says, give me a call, my number is 771-3246. What was it? 46 or 64? Doesn't matter, 771-32, whichever way. No, you dial one way, you'll end up with one person. Another way, you'll end up with someone in Honolulu. How did that happen? Just a different order. So, because it's not the numbers that I'm pressing. These numbers are connected to a system. And the system is connected to communication and reaching people around the world, or internet. So if I just make a dot instead of something else, I'll be a whole different connection. The same thing with the words. Each word is a keli, especially when Hashem speaks these words. It's a keli for energy. And depending on the same letters, but a different order, is a different energy. Now, once we explained the idea of kelim, now he goes into explaining what shviras are kelim. One more line. So depending on how the letters are rearranged, that's how the meaning of the word will change. The dugmas tzir habayis, like the shape of a house. Ba'arkai, rachbai, v'gavei shulafi, mispra, one of his sidra. So you have two houses, and you say, what's the difference? One is built with stones, or none is not with stones. No, they're both with stones. So how come this one's bigger than the other one? Because this one has 2,000 stones, and this one has 200 stones. So this is small, and that one's big. but how come this one is arranged? This house looks so comfortable, and this house looks like it's not set up so good, because here the stones are arranged one way and they're arranged another way. That's what architectural work is all about, setting things up in a certain way. So it's the same stones, but just the way I arrange them will make the difference what the house looks like and how it'll accommodate things in that house. So the same is with Hashem. When he speaks and creates the world through letters, all depending on the letters that are used will bring a different kind of creation, just because the order of the letters have changed. That's without, there's a whole section in Tanya called Shari Yichud B'Amuna, the second volume of Tanya, that explains that the whole world was created by the Eibishter's speech. The Eibishter's speech is only 22 letters in the Aleph Beis, but these 220 letters could be rearranged in infinite different ways. And every time the letters are arranged differently, there's a new creation as a result of that. The creation of these three worlds, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, this is a result of the Shviras HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels. Shein Oisi is the Tayo, Shein Espardu. What does breaking of the vessels mean? So we just now explained that vessels are letters. In the world of Torah, there were also letters, and the letters became separate one from the other. And that's what it means that the Kalim broke. Soon explain. And when it broke, how many pieces did it break into? 288 pieces, which are the 288 sparks. And these 288 sparks we have to elevate in the time of Golus. Asher raised Beis Netzutzes, 202 of these sparks were already elevated. They were elevated in the Golus of Mitzrayim. Where do we know this from? So the Arizal says it's based on a pasuk. Gam Erev Rav Olo Itam. So we like to look at the pasuk inside. So let's look at that pasuk, which is on page 36. I should also show you page 35. That's the pasuk we mentioned before. Eis tzarihi liyakov u'mimena yivashaya. It's a time of distress for the Jewish people, but they will be delivered from it, not only away from it, but out of it will come the salvation. And here is page 36, where it says that Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, 600,000 Yidden. In addition to the 600,000 Yidden, Gam Erev Rav, a great mixture of nationalities, also went out with them. Who was this? So Rashi says, a mixture of various nations who were proselytes, which means that they converted they wanted to become Yidden. They saw the miracles, they saw the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu, so they want to shall Gerim, they became Gerim. So the Arizal says the word is Erev Rav. Rav is spelled Reish Beis. It's referring to 202 sparks out of the 288 went out of Mitzrayim with them. In other words, when these people went out of Mitzrayim, they were human beings, but they embodied in them the 202 of the sparks. And these 202 sparks were really elevated as a process of all the work that was done while they were in Mitzrayim and did the slavery for 210 years. When they went out, that was sort of the embodiment of this process of 202 sparks leaving Egypt and coming into the Jewish, becoming part of Kedusha, which was the Am Yisrael. But there's still another 86 left. Pei, Vav, and Netzutzes, and 86 of the sparks, which is the Gematria Hateva, the same Gematria as the word Hateva, Tzrichim Lizbarer Bagimel Golius. These sparks need to be elevated. And when are they going to be elevated in the three Golusim? But mainly and primarily in this last Golus. So what does it mean? So we have a few things here which, if you look at the page that has the terms. So which page is that? Okay, look at page 16. So we have the terms there: Kalim, Shviris HaKalim, Olam HaTayu, Rapach Nitzutzes, Peivav Nitzutzes. So these are all very common terms of Chassidus. And it's describing the whole concept of elevating the sparks, which according to Kabbalah, that's what all our Avodah is about. Yes, there are billions and trillions of differences of people of different generations, different Avodas, but all in all, what is it about? That there was Shviris HaKalim in the world of Tohu, and our Avodah is to correct that damage that was done to the Kalim of Tohu. So we have to explain this a little bit. What is Kalim? What is Shviris HaKalim? And what does it mean by sparks? And what does it mean that it's only 288 sparks? And like we can actually count them with numbers. And there's 86 that are left. And then, of course, we can bring in what the Rebbe said in the year Tafshinun Beis, 1992. This is Parshas Vayishlach. The Rebbe said that this Avodah of elevating the sparks has already been completed, finished, which on the surface seems shocking because there's still a lot of work to do. So we have to understand what elevating the sparks is all about to understand what that means. But the clock is telling me that we'll have to leave it for tomorrow. So let me take the Tillim, and we'll say a Kapitel Tillim for the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. And in essence, today we need it for the Yidden all around the world, that Eibishter should perform miracles of miracles in Eretz Yisrael and should affect every aspect that needs to be affected: the hostages, the health, and the safety, the soldiers and the people, and the recognition of Hashem in the whole entire world. So we're doing Kapitel Chav. Lam Natseach Mizmor David Yancha Adonai B'Yom Tzara Sageb Hashem Elohei Yaakov. See the word Tzara? So we're turning around the word Tzara into Tzayar. Yishlach Ezrecha Mikodesh U'Mitzion Yisadeka Yizkar Kol Min Chesecha Va'iloscha Yidash Nesela Yitem Lecha Chil Vavecha V'Cholatzoscha Yimale Neranana B'Shuasecha U'V'Shem Eloheinu Nidger Yimale Adonai Kol Mishalesecha Ata Yodaiti Ki Yeshia Adonai Meshichei Ya'anehu Mishmei Kodshe B'Gures Yesha Yeminu Eile V'Rechev Ve'eile V'Susim V'Nachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Nazkir Heima Koru V'Nafalu V'Nachnu Kamnu V'Nesoidot Adonai Yeshia HaMelech Ya'aneinu V'Yem Kareinu. There's something very special about this kapitel, not something, a lot of things, how this kapitel is geared towards bringing salvation, but specifically salvation from Golus in general. It's interesting that, for example, there are 70 words in this kapitel, exactly 70 words, which correspond to the 70 years of Golus that came about after the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. And apparently it's also related to the 70 years of Golus that we have gone through or going through. And by saying these words, it brings bracha in the world in general, and specifically to go out of Golus. The Frierdiker Rebbe instituted that those days we don't say Tachnun, and therefore we skip this part in davening. After davening, we should say it as a chapter of Tehillim.
Which 70 years are you talking about now? From the Holocaust?
I don't know when it starts counting, but there's also 70 years. I mean, it's interesting that communism was 70 years exactly, from the beginning to the end. Which means that there's also at the end of Golus, there's 70 difficult years, which Baruch Hashem, it appeared to be that that's over, but it's still connected to all these things that we need to do. Okay.
There's tzedakah here in a pushka.
There's tzedakah also.
Thanks, everyone, Destiny.